Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Angry Cast. How y'all doing? We're gonna do something here. Talk about another movie, Top Gun Maverick. Holy crap! Spoiler alert! Just in case you haven't seen the movie and you plan on watching it, you might want to just hold off on listening to all this. So I had a chance to watch it finally from home, and I'm gonna tell you something. I liked it better when it was called Iron Eagle 2: A New Hope in San Andreas. If that reference doesn't mean anything to you, let's break that down. The basic plot of the movie. It's now, of course, it's like 2019, 2020 time frame. Pete Mitchell, aka Maverick, played by Tom Cruise, is testing out high-speed test, planes in the Mojave Desert. This one specifically trying to get to Mach 9, or it's going to get shut down by Ed Harris, as I guess he's an admiral. And they, Maverick being Maverick, does what he does, and he ends up getting, shit canned from there and has to go to Top Gun to be an instructor, in a sense. And he was already an instructor at one point. And he has 12 cadets that he has to, actually 12 graduates of Top Gun school, who are the best of the best, who they have to narrow down into, I think, was it 6 or 8 people to fly a mission and take out something from a rogue nation. It's always a rogue nation. It's never specifically said who it is. Just a rogue nation. It's I guess a uranium-enriched, like the nuclear weapons kind of thing, whatever. It's a bunker somewhere in between, and a crater, and a very, high, steep walls. Got to make it as difficult as possible to get in there and blow the thing up. And in order to do that, he has to train these people to fly underneath the radar in a certain amount of time to get below surface-to-air missiles, climb a steep hill, go inside, blow up a bunker, and then sink a missile into there, and then get out and get away before the surface-air missiles and any other planes can find them and get back to the carrier. Okay, so if you ever watched a movie called Iron Eagle back in the 80s, it was right around the same time that Top Gun came out. It starred Jason Gedrick and Louis Gossett Jr. And Jason Gedrick's father was shot down in some rogue nation and being held captive. And Jason Gedrick, his son, was just graduating high school and planned a rescue mission with the help of a mechanic and former colonel in the Air Force, played by Chappie Sinclair, or played by Louis Gossett Jr., his character was called Chappie Sinclair, to use all of his, Jason Gedrick, all of his connections at the base. He had everything wired. This was before the internet. To get anything he needed. And he got 2 planes that had all the ammunition he could carry and fuel and all that, and clearances to fly over there. Landed, got his dad out, and then escaped. Never would have happened. Never would have happened in that time, let alone today. But it was suspension of disbelief. It was fun. There was 3 or 4 sequels to that movie. The second one having Jason Gedrick in it. And again, spoiler alert, within the first 10 minutes, he dies. Or so we think he dies. He's shot down overseas somewhere, and Chappie Sinclair is called, I guess, out of retirement, if I remember correctly, to train a bunch of people, a bunch of cadets or whatever, to go blow up something. And it's you have to train these people to work together and do this thing and do all that and fly overseas. Sound familiar? If you saw Top Gun Maverick, yeah, it's the same damn plot. Same idea, same thing. Then, at some point, it turns into Star Wars: A New Hope, where they're going to do a trench run and fly to the end of an area and blow up and sink a missile into a bunker, just like the trench run at Star Wars. At the end of Star Wars, the first movie chronologically released. Then, after that, Maverick gets shot down during the escape and has to be rescued. So one of the characters goes back for him, and they get shot down. And now they're both behind enemy lines, and both decide to approach an Air Force base or a runway and steal a plane and escape, which is basically what you can do in Grand Theft Auto 5 or Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. You parachute or you sneak into the airbase and you steal one of the jets, which in the original Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, I think it was a Harrier jet, which could take off and land like a VTOL. But with the Grand Theft Auto 5 or Grand Theft Auto Online, it's just a standard, jet. So there you go. That's where I got the whole, Iron Eagle 2, A New Hope in San Andreas. Okay, I didn't hate the movie. And I like that they called back to the original with references to, Goose and to Meg Ryan's character and Charlie, Kelly McGillis's character. But they totally, I totally matched character description with Miles Teller playing the son of Goose, known as Bradley Bradshaw, aka Rooster, being matched to Anthony Edwards' Goose. But a lot of things about this movie were problematic at best. One, and I'm not going to say anything because guess what? Val Kilmer is a national treasure as far as an actor. I will go to bat on his body of work for that. In fact, there's a documentary about his fight with cancer and how his life is now, which is really, really, really good, and it's narrated by his son, who has a very distinct sounding voice that almost sounds like Val Kilmer's. Val Kilmer, of course, plays Iceman, Tom Kazansky. He's in the movie, and he only has really 3 lines because he has, his voice was destroyed by, having to treat his cancer. In fact, he now has there's a technology that has taken his voice from previous clips, of his work, and created a voice for him to use to talk to people in his own voice instead of that standard voice box sound you hear when he has to hold the device up to his throat, which is amazing. And that's how they did it. They took that same technology, I think it's Soma, I don't know what it's called, but they used it to recreate his voice, and they made it like it was very rough because he had throat cancer in the movie that had come back, and they made it sound like that. But I mean, they used his this technology to make his voice, and then they made it sound like he has a problem, like he has something wrong. So it was pretty cool how they did all that. They used the same kind of technology, I think, in Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Disney Plus series, in order to get James Earl Jones's voice for Darth Vader, because James Earl Jones, sadly he's getting up there, and he didn't record any new dialogue. They just used his voice from previous clips to make this voice to record those lines using that technology. And it's spot on. I mean, it was spot on, because if you've watched Rogue One, the delivery, he recorded his lines in Rogue One, and the delivery, well, you could tell, was somewhat different than his delivery 30 years ago, almost 40 years ago at the time, in even Return of the Jedi. Even in Revenge of the Sith in Episode 3, it was a little bit, I think there was only a couple of lines he had, and it was, this is the first time Anakin's talking as Vader in his new suit, so it could be different than his normal speaking voice that he used in the other 3 movies. That makes sense. But again, the fact that, even in Rogue One, when he was talking, it was really messed up. I mean, you could tell that there was some degradation in such an iconic booming voice, which to this day will be one of my favorite of all time voices. So that being said, back to Maverick. Again, they did a lot of great call. They called back to the character that was in only mentioned in Top Gun. They talked about an admiral's daughter, and that's Penny. That's the Jennifer Connelly character. They made her an actual character in this movie to replace sort of like the Meg Ryan character. Or, I'm sorry, to replace the Charlie character. They didn't actually say what happened to Charlie. I don't know if Kelly McGillis was not available, if they, if there was some ageism going on here because she doesn't look the way she used to look back then. She's considerably older. I don't know. That's not for me to figure out. Wasn't in on the production meetings. They chose to not go that route. Maybe they just didn't want to have older characters. They wanted to introduce newer characters, and they only have one returning character really, and that was Maverick. Everybody else is played by somebody different. James Tolkien, who was the bald guy from the first Top Gun, he's in his 80s. Tom Skerritt is in his 80s. So now you got John Hamm, you got Charles Parnell, and you've got Ed Harris. Ed Harris is still kicking it as the Man in Black on Westworld. So there you go. But that being said, there's also some issues that happen with that I take a little bit of umbrage with. I am not one for doubting that the character is faithful to the original Maverick character. However, why is it that only Maverick can solve the problem? Okay, the entire point of this movie is that they have to do something nearly impossible. The pulling the G's to get out of the canyon, the getting to the target on time, all that other stuff, avoiding all those problems. That seems like, we can't do it. You got to shorten the window. You can't do it. We're going to use a drill. Do this. We're going to just shorten time, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes and he steals the jet, and he proves that he can do it. In a simulated air, I guess if you think about it, in the real thing, he did it as well, but the idea that he had to do that in order to prove that it could be done and it shouldn't be canceled or any other way is a little bit egotistical from the standpoint of if I were a producer on the movie, be like, well, okay, sure, yeah, of course Tom Cruise is going to be the friggin' hero because Tom Cruise is producing the movie. Yeah, you're allowed to have that. That's fine, no problem. But just don't make it come off that way. And not only that, but Megan and I watched the movie, and she's like, if that were to actually have happened, he would have been blown out of the sky or arrested on sight. You don't just get to just say, oh, he did it, son of a bitch, I'm in, No, he broke so many protocols that as soon as he landed the plane, he'd be out of there. Especially, he was already out of there to begin with. He should have had all of his clearance revoked. He should never be, where I work, the day you're gone, all your access is gone. You would not be able to do the things he did from that standpoint. You would be barred from the base. Your badges wouldn't work. They'd have you on a list. You would have had your ass thrown in the brig for all of that. Never would have happened. So don't give me this bullshit that they can sit there and have this conversation and then sit there and cheering him on in the background. No. And he wouldn't be allowed on the mission. No. I don't care how. You just don't do that stuff. That's just not going to happen. Additionally, there's a lot of other things that I don't want to spend a lot of time going around the barrel or around the the axle on, but it's entertaining. It's a little bit longer than it needed to be because you've got basically 3 acts. The first act is Maverick gets sacked. The second act is Maverick teaches the kids, and then the third act is Maverick goes on the mission. That then culminates with him being shot down with Rooster and having to steal that F-14 and get out of there. Now, I don't know if logistically those maneuvers were capable of, and from what I've been told, there wasn't a lot of CGI, that these were all practical effects, and if they were actually done with planes, there's a lot of shit that would have your insides on your outsides the way that was working. So I just don't know that 60-year-old Tom Cruise, even in the best shape he could be in, 60-year-old Pete Mitchell in the best shape he possibly could be in, would be able to sustain all of the G-forces that were being pulled on that trip out of the crater. So again, but then again, I said earlier, you have to have a healthy dose of suspension of disbelief and just enjoy the ride. And I did. I enjoyed the ride. It was good. I liked that they called back to Goose, but it just seemed like every time, like, talk to me, Goose, talk to me, Goose, talk to me, Dad, talk to me. And like, okay, we get it. You used that line that was done twice in the first movie, and you even had it like happen here where even Rooster says something to the effect of, how to fly, show me that pilot stuff, or, pilot this thing or whatever. I get it. Tom Kazansky, like I said, Val Kilmer, his role. I don't know if there would have been a different plot or character arc for Val Kilmer's character had he not already been suffering the effects of going through cancer treatment. I understand why they did that, like why they went that route, and it makes perfect sense. There's a level of, commitment to something when, you people who fight for you are, no longer in your corner, that kind of thing. So yeah, the plot, was driven by that aspect, and the plot was written ahead of time with that full well knowledge, and that, they were going to include him in the movie. In fact, he's the only other character from the original movie that showed up in this movie. So I'm going to go back and fix my earlier statement of saying, like, he's the only one that came back, the only character that came back. No, 2 characters, but he was only in it for like 10 minutes. They talked over text. That's like what they did with Kim Cattrall and Just Like That, the sequel to Sex and the City. She wasn't in the show, but her character was referred to, and they constantly talked to Sarah Jessica Parker's character over text. So yeah, I get all that. But I don't know that the overarching story was served well by having to go that route with Val Kilmer, but that's just me. And like, I don't want to have a plot be dictated by circumstances beyond the plot's control, like the actors themselves. We saw that in The Matrix, where the first Matrix, you had Harold Perrineau, you had let me back that up. You had characters replaced by other characters because of contract disputes. And it's not that the actors were just replaced, the entire characters were changed. The first Matrix had a couple of characters in it that survived that weren't in the second and third movie, and they were replaced by somebody else. Harold Perrineau, I believe, is the character in question, or is the actor in question. He was on Lost. Also, but if you look at the Marvel movies, Terrence Howard played Rhodey in the first Iron Man, and then every subsequent Marvel movie that featured Rhodey was played by Don Cheadle. They didn't change the character and write him out. They didn't recast, or they didn't do something where it's like, oh, somebody else has to play the part now that the actor's no longer available. They just said, you're going to just accept the fact that there's somebody else is playing the character. They could have done that in The Matrix. Would they have done that in Maverick to replace Val Kilmer as Iceman? Hell to the no. You would not have done that. So that was going to be something that was going to happen no matter what. It was either going to be Val Kilmer was going to be playing Iceman, or Iceman was not going to be in the movie. And I really appreciate that they stayed true to having Val Kilmer in the movie, Val Kilmer doing his own acting, and they didn't totally CGI his appearance, or make him look like they did with Carrie Fisher in the subsequent movies in the Star Wars series where she was no longer around, or in Rogue One where they de-aged her, or just like they did with Mark Hamill and Mandalorian and Boba Fett. So I'm glad that they let nature be a guide for how the character was going to have been looking, and yeah, his subsequent experiences drove the plot a little bit. Again, I'm torn on that matter. I love the fact that he's there. I love that they gave him that commitment, and coming from someone who lost somebody to cancer, I'm there. I'm cool with it. It's just I kind of worry that they wrote the plot surrounding that idea. Had he not had anything happen to him and they still gone that route, okay, fine, sure, whatever. But that be it as may, whatever. Also, there seemed to be really, really, really light on character development. You had 12 people going into that training or that instruction. Like what, Harvard, Yale, all these other people. You had, Hangman. Hangman, oh, by the way, good character. Asshole. Loved him. But Rooster, there could have been more development. I mean, sorry, but there could have been more development. We didn't really get a sense of what he was really about. There was a lot of things that happen off screen that were playing into it. They didn't spend a lot of time to it. I think they should have shortened the amount of people involved. Been like the people who were there. Just say, we're not going to have a team of alternates or whatever else. They could have done something else to get Hangman stuck on the deck, and then have him show up later. I could have wrote that out as a different way of doing it. Having him be just an alternate, and having Maverick take his place. They could have done something different than saying, well, we got too many people. We can't do it with this many people. You got, 12 people in here. We can only take 6. No. There's a different way they could have done that. Light on the development of the characters in that point. That's another sticking point. But other than that, I enjoyed the movie. I give it a, 7 out of 10. So, that's all for tonight. We will talk about something next time, and we will see you then. Have a good one. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.